Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. For everyone online, we're just getting everyone settled here. We'll be with you in just a minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a very engaging lineup of presentations. My name is Jackie Manning, and I am the Firewise Regional Coordinator in Placer County Office of Emergency Services. Before we begin, we have just a few details to cover. Bathrooms are out this door to the left at the end of the hall. And in case of an emergency, knock on wood, we don't have one, please use any of the lighted exit signs to leave the building. We have a very full schedules of speakers, so please reserve your questions till the end after everyone's presented, unless there's something quick that they can address at the time. After all of the presentations, I do encourage you to visit with our partners in the 2 Jeff Brown rooms down the hall. They are down the hall to the right. We have tables set up. Please stop by. They have informational tables, materials, and resources to talk to you about. Given that, we're going to move into our presentations. Our first presenter today is Megan Fitzgerald McGowan from NFPA. Megan, are you online?
I am. Are you able to see and hear me? I'm gonna go, okay, I see a thumbs up online. Cool. So, hi everyone, my name is Megan. I work for the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, and we are the custodians, owners of the Firewise USA program. NFPA is headquartered out of Quincy, Massachusetts. It has a very long history there. It's a lot bigger than Wildfire and Firewise. That's a very small part of what NFPA does. I myself am located in the West. I live in Washington State. It's the state I grew up in. It's the state where I fought fire for many years as a wildland firefighter, and where I'm hoping to be probably for the rest of my life, helping the citizens, community members here and across the country as we tackle wildfire preparedness. I do have a short presentation today to give kind of the history and a high overview of Firewise USA for some of you who are new or just maybe don't quite know how it came to be. So I will bring that up. All right. Okay, can I get a thumbs up from someone if you're able to see the screen? And hopefully it's showing in the correct format of just part you're supposed to see. All right, so engaging residents in wildfire preparedness, a little Firewise USA 101. So, kind of our tagline and the intent of the program. Firewise USA is a voluntary recognition program that provides a framework to help residents get organized, find direction, take action, and increase the ignition resistance of their homes and community. And I want to really emphasize voluntary and recognition. So, anything that you do in participating in Firewise is really your choice. We put out recommendations. We do have criteria to join, but we don't make anybody do anything. And we don't give authority to any organization, neighborhood, entity to force people to do certain actions. You might have rules within your HOA if that's how you operate, or codes or programs on the book in your community, county, state that require you to do certain things, but none of that is coming from NFPA or the Firewise USA program. And I want to also touch on recognition. We recognize your efforts. Once your community joins, it is provided with a certificate of recognition. It is not a certificate in terms of a certification. NFPA offers professional certifications for individuals around different things. And to us, certification really implies that you've met a certain standard. You are doing tasks to a certain level. Everything has been inspected, checked off, things like that. So it's just a point of clarification. It might seem small to a lot of you, but there are different programs and resources coming out there that you have to meet a certain number of steps. You have to do all of the things, and it implies you're meeting a standard. Whereas Firewise USA is all about bringing people together, sharing information, helping to educate and inform around, how do homes ignite from a wildfire and what steps can people take and why should they work together. But at no point are we saying you shall do all these things. So just wanted to throw that out there as we start, because we get a lot of questions around that or a lot of confusion. So just want to try to alleviate some of that. I forgot to start my timer. The program has been around quite some time. It started in 2002 as a small pilot under a cooperative agreement with the Forest Service, with support from the Department of the Interior and the National Association of State Foresters. We had 12 original communities across the country, and 9 of those are still active today and out there doing great things. And the intent was these different land management organizations looking at the wildfire problem. There had been some very destructive fires impacting communities, and trying to figure out how do we as land management organizations address these, because it wasn't necessarily in their mission. And NFPA has a very long history in home fire safety, smoke alarm programs, different things like that, and had done a lot within communities. So they came to us as a partner to say, can you help us tackle this built environment problem where these homes are becoming more intermixed with the areas where we manage and fight fires? It is a program based in science. So all of those recommendations that are pointed out in your community's risk assessment or individual home assessments, it's not just because we think they're good ideas. It's based on what research has shown us. So some of that original stuff was done by Dr. Jack Cohen and others back in the 80s. He went up to Canada and did a bunch of experiments with structures and lighting the off forest sections near them to see what was the right distance that a home could, or a building could survive with that radiant heat and those impacts from those large flames. Through his research, fire does not engulf everything in its path. It only advances to locations that meet the requirements of combustion. And that if we alter the type, size, quantity, and spacing of vegetation and other fuels, we'll reduce that likelihood of combustion. And then that research has been ongoing by other organizations. And I know there's a lot of information coming out in California from the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. We do work closely with them. We have been to their labs. We've collaborated with them on different resources, and big fans of their wildfire prepared home program, because that's really honing in on those specific steps that, when you combine them all together, make that structure as ignition resistant as possible. So it's kind of how that all came to be, and how those recommendations work. How it kind of functions is it's this idea of really community grassroots. We are all here to provide guidance and recommendations, but at the end of the day, it's your home, it's your property, it's your neighborhood, it's your HOA. And you have to help be the driver of the actions you are taking. The state, well, I don't know about all the specific laws in California around, some of the Chapter 7A and some of those defensible space inspections. But in general, government can't just come into your property and do things for you or tell you what to do and send you a bill. And as we look at all the other states where this program is, it's that buy-in, that back and forth, that relationship between your state agency and then your local practitioners, like Jackie. Jackie is the point of contact in Placer County, but she's also working with the fire departments who are tied in with their communities, or maybe local CalFire offices or other fire safe councils. In other states, we have things like conservation districts that do a lot of the outreach. And the whole idea is it's a collaboration, bringing subject matter experts together with the residents to look at a problem, share different perspectives, and find those solutions and path forwards that are agreeable. As you work through the recognition process, it's also important to see how this flows. Your community fills out the application in the portal. Your local practitioners have access to help you with that application, provide some of the documents. And then when all of that is submitted, it goes to your state liaison, who is with CalFire. They review, give it their stamp of approval, or circle back with questions and feedback. And then eventually it comes to NFPA for the final onboarding. So why Firewise USA? Why any of this work? It's that general idea that wildfires are a part of the ecosystem and will continue to be. That most homes are located on private property. So again, it's that piece of who can actually come do the work. Um, Homeowners have the right to make choices about their properties, and often, and we're seeing this shift more, they are under the impression that there's nothing they can do. I think there's a fair amount of people out there who are starting to recognize the role that they have to play, the actions they can take. I think we can all acknowledge that it can be a daunting task, and it might feel that there's nothing you can do or impossible, but the whole idea is you just keep chipping away and ideally working with your neighbors because you influence each other's safety. Real quick, this is a nationwide program, and up until a few years ago, California was kind of quiet in its participation, but I know the landscape has changed there in terms of fires that are happening, other pressures, and we're seeing a lot of growth. But we have longstanding participation in the Pacific Northwest, in the Southeast, and really across the country. Hawaii is another growing state. So I just want you guys to know you're not alone. There are lots of people trying to tackle this, facing different challenges within their community, finding different solutions to overcome some of those. And as a group here at NFP, we are trying to figure out better ways to share some of those learning opportunities, those success stories, those different strategies for, how do you get your neighbors to actually come to a meeting? How do you get them to help do their part? And over the next few months, as we develop some new resources, we'll be sending those things out. But again, stories from everywhere, because no one community is the same. They're all unique, but there are some common bonds. Just kind of some feedback on what does it take or what does it mean if you're Firewise community. We've had some feedback over the years. People interpret what the program means in different ways. Some think it means a Firewise community is perfect. They've done everything, and that's not true. And for some, they're still at that very beginning learning, and maybe they should be further along. But when we did a pilot project a few years ago, really trying to get 7 communities like this, we want 100% of your homes up to 100 in your boundary to do all of the things. And as they were giving feedback, they talked about how, a Firewise sign doesn't mean you've done it all, but it means you admit that you have a problem and that we're working on it. And I would say to all of you, you're here, so you acknowledge that we have a wildfire problem and we want to be a part of the solution, and you're trying to figure out the best path forward for you and your neighbors. So I think we can probably skip by this, the general idea, because we've already touched on most of it, into really the nuts and bolts. And I'm just going to give the high kind of overview about the steps to recognition, and these are the steps that are nationwide and that have been in place since the beginning of the program. So for any community who is interested, you need to form a group, a committee comprised of residents and other stakeholders, such as your fire department, your Office of Emergency Management, whoever those right partners are in the area, or maybe even your local CERT group, because they're willing to help do some of the outreach. Or if you have other service organizations, it looks different in every community, but there are a lot of different resources that you can leverage to help you as you pursue this undertaking. And we say that should be the first step. And committee, we have some longstanding communities where there's one person within that neighborhood said, we should do this, I'm going to lead the way, but they didn't have support. They didn't bring others on to help them. And when they move on, pass on, just get tired of doing it, there's no one to keep it going. And in terms of being in the program, of course, we love having all of you in it and we want to keep people in it. But the real important thing is having that group to keep the neighborhood going on, being fire safe and doing those actions, bringing people together, making it be a part of how you live and breathe in your area, right? Because fires are going to happen. This isn't a one and done. You do one thing, you never have to think about it again. It's a way of being, it's a way of life. And so having a committee of multiple people to help kind of shoulder that, and even if you have folks who don't want to be on your formal committee, building your network of folks who will say, well, I'll be a neighborhood captain and I'll talk to my 3 neighbors on my cul-de-sac. You know, there's different ways to divvy out tasks, or maybe you have someone who's really good with outreach or marketing. They don't want to be a committee person, but they'll help with an email campaign or managing your Facebook page or however you want to do it. You don't have to do it on your own. It might take time to identify those people, but it is worth it to bring folks on board and have a group. Once you have that group, then the next step is completing a wildfire risk assessment. And I know our CalFire representative is going to go a little bit more in depth on that. And then determine the size and the boundary. So our communities self-select. They tell us what their boundary is and how many homes are in their boundary. But to that point, and we're working on some better guidance, your boundary needs to be contiguous. So you don't do a circle here and then a line to a circle there. You just draw a big circle around all those homes. And we acknowledge that not every home in that boundary will participate at first or maybe ever. But when you look at social science and how these things go, you want it to be positive. If you are open and inviting, engaging from the start, you're more likely to get some of those kind of people who are standoffish to be engaged versus if you cut them out and make it exclusive and aren't inviting, right? You know, the more of the kind of carrot approach or a sweet approach versus a stick and punitive. We say a minimum of 8 and then a maximum of up to 2,500. And that's really for engagement and management and collecting information. And if you have a large HOA, more than 2,500 homes, we encourage you to break it into sections that make sense, whether it's along geographic features or kind of neighborhoods. There's different ways those can be broken down. We've had a lot of communities join over the years that have had success in breaking it into smaller functional groups. It also helps them with their outreach and participation. Once you've done all of that, you have to develop a plan, multi-year. And again, CalFire has a template and they'll be walking you through what that 3-year action plan looks like. When those things are in place and you've shared them with your community and talked about what you're doing, you're going to make sure to host a minimum of 1 educational outreach event a year. It could be a meeting, it can be some sort of email campaign, Facebook. Be creative. And then meet the minimum wildfire risk reduction investment. And this, well, I don't want to tell you a dollar amount because the voluntary hourly rate changes each year, and it's set by the independent sector. They update theirs in April. We lock it in at the beginning of the year, so you're not having to look at that fluctuate during the year, the calendar year. But really, it's based on the number of dwelling units. So if you have 100 homes in your community, you need 100 hours of work per year, or then the dollar equivalent. And it's work or money spent, but not both. So let's say your community uses contractors to manage your lawns, right? It's paid for by the HOA. You're paying for those services. You either report on the amount paid or the hours they worked, but not both, because that would be kind of double dipping. So as you think about how you're going to meet that investment, it's hours or money, but please no double dipping. Now, I'm not going to do an audit of every site and look that in depth. So it's use your best judgment, fill the application out to the best of your ability. We sometimes estimates are best. It's hard to collect hours from people. So know that we're flexible, and this again is voluntary, and we want to encourage folks to do the work and make it as easy as we can while still having to have a process. And then the final step is telling us all about it, filling out your application on the portal, and then submitting it. And the person who does the application in the portal is going to be either the resident leader from your committee, or you can have multiple in the portal. That way people can update things, as it works for them. So again, everything goes into our online portal. We do not have paper applications anymore. Those went away in 2017. And here's just kind of a view of what a portal view might look like. It's a little bit older with the investment. So that application gets submitted, it goes to the state liaison who will review it. And if they approve it, it comes to NFPA and we will review and do the final onboarding. And then we'll ship out materials. So once you're in and you're part of the fun, then the next step is staying in the program. If you find value and you want to keep participating, then to remain in good standing, you basically have to do the same thing every year. You have to fill out a renewal application, tell us about the outreach you did during the year, tell us about the work your community did during the year, and if you are at the right cycle, you may have to update your action plan or update your risk assessment. Those are things that weren't put in place at the beginning of the program when it started in 2002. Those went into place in 2018, those update cycles for the documents, because we found some communities just got real comfortable doing the same thing they'd always done. They would have a barbecue every year where they talk about wildfire. They'd have a community work day, where they'd work on a common area. Maybe some people would do some stuff around their property, but they weren't really diving into what do our homes look like? Are we working on hardening, not my favorite word, or those retrofits, or doing those different things to make sure that those homes are as impervious to embers as they can be? Are they working in that 0 to 5 foot space where we just don't want anything that's going to burn? Are they working within their own home ignition zone? And so the update to the assessment and to the action plan is to help these communities see changes over time, where they're improving, where they still need to focus, to help that work be meaningful in the right place at the right time. Because I think we can all acknowledge not all communities have fared well during a wildfire event. And some, it's just the conditions. Wildfires can be intense. And then we've had others come back and tell us, well, we knew that particular area was a problem. It was going to be expensive to fix it. We didn't want to tackle it. So we were working on these other things. And so they've told us that, and we just want to make sure we're giving as much guidance to help all of you, or really your subject matter experts are helping to give you as much guidance as they can so you can prioritize what can we easily tackle that's maybe easy to do, cheap or free, it's just work, or what's really important that we need to save for, but we need to prioritize it because that's really going to make a difference in our community. And then, I have some quotes from other people about the program. I'll probably just kind of skip through them. I will share this one because this community, we have a success video about them online, but this community near Durango, they had done a lot of work with their local nonprofit organization, and they were participating in the Firewise program. They had a large fire, and they all evacuated as they should, and they were scared to see what would happen. But we find out that the work they'd done had made a difference. Not only their fire chief spoke up on their behalf when the management team came in, and they're trying to figure out the fire spreading this way. Oh, it's going towards this community. This could be really bad. And this chief was able to say, no, they've done a lot of work. We can use this. We can actually put crews in there safely because they have reduced the overhead vegetation. They've created space, and they were able to kind of use it to help with their tactics, to kind of turn the fire. And we have some examples from California. We have examples from Texas, and we'll be sharing those out again as we move into the fall and look at some different outreach techniques we're going to try. But it's you're not doing this for nothing. It does make a difference. It can have an impact, but it can't just be one person here and there. And that's why this is a community-based program. If you are one home that has done all of the recommendations, all of the work, but you're on a small lot, your home ignition zone, so out to 100 feet is actually someone else's property where they haven't done anything, you're still at risk. And it might even be high risk because of what everything around you looks like. So it's really important to be working with your neighbors, talking with your neighbors, trying to find ways to leverage each other's tools and resources, helping each other out. And that is what the program is really about, is how do we make that difference on the ground? How do we help each other? And how do we move forward? So I know we're going to do questions at the end, but that's again that high overview of Firewise, the intent behind it, when it started, how we kind of function. And I know some of the more technical stuff is going to be gone over by our next presenter. So I will stop there.
Thank you so much, Megan. It was great information. We do have our next presenter, Captain James Osbo, and he'll be here to speak to us about risk assessments and action plans.
Perfect. Good afternoon. I'm James Osbo. I'm a captain with Northern Region Land Use Planning, and I am your state representative. You'll see that on your portal, your Firewise portals. And I work underneath the state liaison, and who is Shane Vargas, Chief Shane Vargas. He shows up on your portal as well. Today here, I'm a common question and a common walkthrough for us is what's the risk assessment and what's the action plan and what is your role as the resident leaders and community leaders and outreach people in your community and what you're going to go through to get this. So I don't have a PowerPoint. What I wanted to bring to you is an actual risk assessment. It's one that was completed by one of our communities in California. And I just wanted to walk through, I'm not going to read word for word because that's all of our job to do that on our own, but I wanted to kind of walk through and highlight some of the commonly missed things or the common questions. And then we'll have questions later, but I do have a couple of questions I'll try to answer as we go through this topic. So let's go to the first and second page really are for you to just kind of walk through to get an understanding, because this risk assessment, one of the questions is who is authorized to complete this? And really it's something that we can all print out. It's available on readyforwildfire.org as well as the NFPA Firewise website for anybody in the world to print out. And then you, in your home, you can, as somebody who's interested, you see it on a news article, you see one of the Firewise signs, you see that, you print it out, you can read through it at your leisure. The first part is, to plan and get your board together. So this would really be the first document that your board and committee will go through. So this first 2 pages here are just really highlighting all the main topics of Firewise and the risk assessment. And then if we go to page number 3, we'll dive into one of the first the names there, the participants. So this is one of the first things that people really struggle with because and it says assessment participants right above the red line there. And those include the name, the role or organization, your phone number and email. And so everybody usually gets their name right. But the resident leader, a lot of people, this one I changed it today because I really like to see resident leader. It's kind of the trend that we like to see, but remember, it's your document. So a lot of people have board leader, board member, different names for yourself. I'm totally okay with that as long as we understand who you are and your name is there so we can contact you if we have any questions. The phone number and the email are really important because that way we could reach out to you. Sometimes an email my email will go to your spam, and so you won't even get it. So then if I don't hear back from you in a couple of days, I'll give you a phone call. And the next one's down there. We have the fire chief, and in that same section with the names, sorry. We have the fire chief. It's a requirement that you work with your local fire representative, and that looks different in everywhere. Sometimes it's a local fire protection district, sometimes it's CalFire, the Forest Service, anything like that. We usually like to stay clear of somebody who's retired, a retired member that lives in the community, because we want they might not be originally from that area. And we want that local fire history, and we want you to be able to ask them questions is really why that's there. And then I put Fire Safe Council in here. Fire Safe Council, we really want you to be tied into a 501c3 corporation, usually a Fire Safe Council. A lot of our regional coordinators are with the Fire Safe Council, and they bring that grant funding and community projects to you, giving you that avenue to work through that. Then the next section here is the general site description. This is pretty easy, but the site name, I want to point on that. We all know that you're a Firewise community, so when you're educating other people on what site name to do, we don't need it to say Crystal Lake Firewise or Crystal Lake Firewise community. You can just write Crystal Lake. On this document, you can write whatever you want. It's okay, but when your portal, if you put Crystal Lake Firewise, Megan, who was just speaking, but if I don't take it out, by the time it gets to her, she usually takes the Firewise out because that name will go on to some of your documents. And so it's just nice to say Crystal Lake. And obviously the city and the county are pretty easy. On your certificate of recognition, sometimes these counties, or sorry, the city might not be in the, you write that you live in Lakeview here, but then you're in Longview actually, and it'll show that up because it's the neighboring site. So if you ever get that, just reach out to me and we can see if we can get that fixed. The boundary description. So when you get down into these lines on this risk assessment on here, if we're printing it out and handwriting it like we used to, you really don't have much room to write, right? But on this document, that was one of the questions is people having issues filling out the document. And that a lot of times comes down to my laptop having issues today. Your laptop is working on a different operating system. So it's something it's very difficult for you to work through. And if you have any issues, you can reach out to some of your local people or other people in your community to work through this. But the biggest thing that I say here is keep typing and see what happens. Sometimes the words in this document I'll show you, it gets really small, but when you click on it, you can scroll through. And then when you print on it, it doesn't print out. So that's one of the issues. But when we see it and we review it, we can click on it and scroll through and see. The area is it says it's optional here. So key into some of those things, because a lot of this document, one of the biggest things that I get from this document is people get really frustrated with it, with the amount of information that's there, and they get hung up on something like, I don't know how many acres or her square miles or whatever my community is. And so just remember that, try to read, and if it says optional, I know I skip over it too myself. If we can go down to page 4. So this really gets into the first part of the risk assessment is you guys sitting down as you and then maybe your board members is really figuring out how big do you want your site, your community. Megan touched into it is that it's a minimum of 8, maximum of 2,500. If you're going over 500, we really want you to split it up into zones because it makes it more manageable and have a zone leader, but you really need to pick that. And so that's where this first part is this number of dwelling units. The dwelling unit is a home. Generally speaking, most of our homes have a kitchen and a toilet made for continuous occupancy and not just a shed that we're letting our neighbors sleep in. So those are questions we get. It's not tents. It's not, you have your relatives staying there for 6 months and they're moving away. So one of the biggest questions is ADUs are coming up, and how do we count all those? And this initial site information really is just driving around you and your members of this risk assessment, and what really can you see from the street, or what can you get from an assessor's office or any of our resources that we have, counting homes from Google Earth, doing the best we can. And then one of the things we like to say is this number, as some of you know, we like to see it match on all the documents. So if you pick 43 like we did here, make sure it says 43 on the portal. And then if you choose to put it in your 3-year action plan, make sure it says 43 there as well. That number is something that you'll stick to throughout the process, unless you choose to increase it or it gets decreased for something like some of the wildfires we've had recently have cut some of our communities in half or more. And so then that's the time when we reach out to us and we work through that process. I have one community right now that had 8 dwelling units, and now there's only 4. So they're underneath the minimum. And so we're working on maybe including some of the other community members that are about 2 miles away. And so like Megan said, we don't want to have a circle over the original community and a circle over the other one. We want to have continuous. So that's really where this starts. And then we start getting into some more typing in here, more check boxes. Just ensure, I always say, don't skip a box. As you read through this, try to answer every question. And some of the things here, like you see how the writing there under the describe the common vegetation types, it gets really small and it gets hard to read, but that's just how this document works. Eventually, as we progress through, as NFPA progresses, there's more things down the future. This document might not be here forever. It might be different iterations, but right now this is where we're at. On page number 5, yeah, the observation. So this is really the windshield survey, we like to call it, where you're driving around and making observations of your community. Not everybody can fit in the same car. So we have the fire representative there, the fire safe council representative, and then however many people, you have neighbors. So what we like is print these out or have it on your tablet, and everybody drive around and do their own assessment and come back and gather at the table and talk about what you saw. So we have things like roofing materials, soffit vents. Soffit vents is the second one. It says unknown because we're not asking you to walk up to somebody's home and do an actual inspection. So from the street, we can't see soffit vents, generally speaking. Another thing I want to point out is these are 25%, so they're not perfect. And so just get a good estimate of what it is. And then these are key things as we go through the next few pages. We'll slowly get down into our defensible space with our 100-foot clearance or to the property line, right? We have zone 0 here, and this NFPA calls it the intermediate zone. The immediate zone is 0 to 5 feet. We also call that zone 0 here in California. So if you want, feel free to write that down on your document so you don't get confused when you're speaking. And then we have intermediate zone 5 to 30, and which is zone 1. And then zone 2 here in California is extended zone 30 to 100. So people get kind of confused on that. And what do? We don't have a preference. We're okay with you writing whatever. Then on page 8, the summary. This is the first part. This is the most important part. And actually, this one, it's showing. So my summary and recommendations, I know those of you online won't be able to see this, but my writing here, I can barely read this in real life. But for some reason on his computer, it's showing up very large, which is a great example. So on my computer, it shows up very small. I have to use a magnifying glass, and my best way of doing it is copying it and pasting it into another document. And so it's nice to see here. We have seen lots of different things in these summary and recommendation spots because this is where you guys take all the findings that you have. If you only have 8 homes, you're not going to find much, right? Everybody's parcel. But when you drive around in your big communities and you see, Johnny's house doesn't have risk reduction, you write that down. You see the open space there that has down trees from the snow or what have you. You write that down. You write down the lack of fire hydrants in a certain area. You write down water tanks here. You write down your evacuation. You write down all this information, and how do you put all this in your summary? So, and that's very daunting for our auditors, for our people who are reviewing these documents to read all that. So what we've pushed back on that, and we really just want to see the check boxes where you check boxes on there. If you said that 50% of the homes have dual pane windows, multi-pane windows, then write that here in the summary. 50% of the homes have multi-pane windows. And then you go to the next one. 75% or more of the homes have a Class A roof. Now, this example here, my regional coordinator helped them write this. And so they wrote that statement. And then underneath it, they wrote all the findings that they had or some recommendations and things in here for education. And this was mainly just to get their thoughts on the paper. So I wanted to tell all of you that we want to meet the intent of writing down our summary, but we also want to understand that you guys want to use this as scratch paper. And so I always encourage you to have scratch paper and don't discard those notes that you took. And we move down to recommendations. So recommendations is literally the inverse of the summary. So we checked all the boxes, and then in the summary, we wrote down all those, which I really like because that's 3 pages of check boxes. And I have a vertical screen, but even my vertical screen, I can't see all 3 pages. So on the summary, I love seeing the summary because it's condensed into 1 page. And then now the recommendations is going to be the inverse of that. So if 50% of the homes have dual pane windows, we want to work on trying to get that to 100%. Now we realize that's costly. So you're going to write in there that we want to work on getting those homes up to dual pane, multi-pane windows. And then in there, you're going to write whatever you want. You might write that we're going to do that over the next 3 years, or you might write in there that we're going to work on finding grants for that or seeking that because not all of us can afford to pay for new windows as an example. That's a costly home hardening thing. So that's the recommendations. Like I said, if you ever get anybody that has questions about these 2 pages, feel free to send me an email, send Jackie an email. As we go to the next steps, so this is just, again, more reading. They just talk about next steps. And then the next page is one of the hardest pages, is the map. So this map, one of the things with the map, and we're really fortunate here in Placer County that we have somebody that actually provides the maps for us. A lot of places, the intent of Firewise, the original intent was for you as the resident leader to be able to make your own map. And so you could photocopy a map or draw it. I have hand-drawn maps of people. There's a lot of places in the United States that still don't have internet. I know a lot here do. But there's still places that don't have internet, and so all they have is a piece of paper and their pencil, and they've lived there for 50 years, and so they draw it from memory. And that's the intent of Firewise. Here in California, we're pretty fortunate. Most of us have internet. Some people choose to color in there. This one's red, and so it needs to have a clearly defined boundary, which this one does, has a little red line around it. And then we want to be able to either see the parcels, the lines around your parcel, or we want to see the building points. So this one shows a little bit of both. Those are condos actually. And so it shows the condominiums. That's why there's in clusters of 3. And then it shows the parcels for each one of those spaces. Now, the biggest step to this one is I've only been able to do it 1 time. I've been in this program for 1 year and 8 months, and I try almost weekly. You're supposed to be able to click. It says right there in the upper right above that map, it says click in the box to insert your image. I've been able to do it 1 time. I thought it was 2, but I only recall once. And every time I try, I feel like your pain. So clearly people could do it because this is new. And for some reason, my laptop won't allow me. So I've given up a long time ago, but I have countless people that can put it in there. You click on it, you insert the image into there. What do we do if we don't? If we can't, like me? Yeah, or maybe Jackie can't. So we put it as an attachment. You can either get fancy and attach it to the bottom of this, or we like to see it attached as a whole separate document underneath the risk assessment. We talked about the steps. One of the questions is, what are the steps of doing this? One of the things is filling this out, this risk assessment, and then digitizing it and saving it as a copy digitally, naming it correctly, which we don't have a guidance for that, but naming it something that you understand what that naming is, and then uploading it into the risk assessment step. And if you couldn't put your map here, then you upload that map and just call it Crystal Lake, boundary map or something like that. And then if we can scroll down to the last couple of pages, these are really informative. They have a lot of examples of what the words mean. And so this is, again, all reading, tells you who the state liaison is and further items. And then now we're going to transition. So this risk assessment, we're going to transition over to the 3-year action plan, which looks like this. I know we'll be able to find it somewhere, but so this risk assessment, we do this first, and we've taken all of these items, and now this first page right here, this is the California approved risk assessment, or sorry, California approved 3-year action plan. The biggest change that we had last year is we redid this first page. And on this first page, on the first paragraph, it says on the last sentence, goals for this plan must include the recommendations located on page 9 of the Firewise USA risk assessment. So we just went through those goals. So that's where we're tying these two plans together. So the bare minimum of this 3-year action plan is to take those things like the multi-pane windows or the roofing or cleaning your gutters or all the things you identified, taking those things that you need to improve, the bare minimum is we want to put those on here. And is this one? Yep. So this is a good example. See how the NFPA Firewise is over the name? Is that over the name, right? Yep. So this happens on my computer. This looked perfect. And on his computer, it jumbled it up a little bit, which is great. It's a great example. So this is something that drives all of us nuts, right? So, so the biggest thing here is behind that in FPA Firewise is the community name. So you have to double click on that for those of you that don't know. And it says that on the first page, there's instructions, but double click on that, enter your community name. And then underneath that, it says Community Wildfire Action Plan, which we can't really see. And we just need to make sure that the year date range is correct. So right now we're at the end of 2024. So if you're creating a new 3-year action plan right now, we're going to go, it's going to be 25, 26, and 27 for a 3-year plan. A lot of people skip this step, so their name's not on the document, right? What we learn in grade school, put your name and date on the document, right? And so this document, they didn't put their name on the document, and then we didn't put the year plan. The first part, if we scroll up just a little bit, I think. Yep. So the first part, there's a paragraph there. A lot of people take this paragraph and they write a huge paragraph. They write a whole novel in here. Some people barely write the bare minimum. And if you could see here, this one did 27 households. So the risk assessment, didn't it say 43? So here's our first. I edited this one this morning. I didn't even catch that. So, but we would catch it in audit, right? So 43 on the risk assessment, and here we did 27. So what's the thing I'm going to call you? Hey, what is it? Right? I'm going to look at your map. I'm going to count and I go, oh, well, are you going with 27 or are you going with 43? And then so you can write a little description of your community. And then that orange bar right there, it says year 1, 2025. That is a clickable box. You have to click in there and change it to 25. Year 2 will be 26. And year 3 will be 27. Some people miss that. I know that's semantics, but it's attention to detail, like we like to say in the fire service. So the first green box is education and outreach goals. So the number one priority is education outreach, right? So we want to have our community event every year. So in each one of these years, you want to write that you're going to have a community event, whatever that means, whatever your outreach goals. I wanted to just show this one, how they have 8 steps in here and they got it in here perfectly. Yep. They got it in here perfectly. I struggle sometimes hitting the enter button and having it go to point number 7. I think there's 6 originally. So you can put a bunch of stuff in here. The next one is home hardening goals. So home hardening is dealing with your structure. So we want to make sure we don't confuse home hardening and defensible space. A lot of people jumble things around into there and put, under the home hardening, they're going to put that they're going to clear their zone 0 or zone 1, and they put other things in there. So just try to take it step by step and go through. Defensible space, this is where we get into Public Resource Code 4291. Defensible space is a law. We cannot break that law in California. So on your risk assessment, you threw yourselves all under the bus and said that, Johnny's house hasn't done their defensible space. We need to limb trees. We need to cut our grass. We need to do all that stuff because we did a windshield survey. So on the NFPA national document, that's okay. We want you to identify those things. But because this document is a California approved document, we don't want you to violate California law on a California approved document. So here we're going to use things like educate, improve, ensure people are in compliance, things like that. We're going to still address all those things, but we're going to do that to ensure, educate, improve. And so one of the things there, if you don't, and you say that, well, right now we only have 25% of the homes have done, zone one, the 5 to 30 foot clearance, only 25%. This first year, we want to get that to 50%. Year two, we want to go to 75. And by year three, we want to go to 100%. So that's a phased in approach to defensible space, and you'll hear that. And so that is violating California law. And so what we want to do is we still want you're going to do that in real life, right? You're still going to go, and it's going to be, we're still all working through this. Or certain people are. Some of us are perfect. Our lots are perfect and everything's good. But many of us aren't, and many of us are this year, but next year we're not because the grass grew back. So that's where we want to ensure. So that's where this section comes in, and we're going to audit that. And if we don't, and we reject it for correction, that's one of the number one things is reject it because you're doing a phased approach to defensible space. You didn't put your education outreach on the first year or something like that. The next one we move into is evacuation planning. This one there's a menagerie of things. That's where really the fire department comes in for evacuation planning. And they give you guys all kinds of tools. There's different resources in the different counties. So this one, go wild. We really encourage everybody to have evacuation plan and talk about water supplies and roads and egress and what the fire department's going to do when they come in and it's really encouraged. So I don't know where we're at in time. I think I did 20 minutes so far, maybe 15. So the risk assessment and the action plan get uploaded in two different sections. I would, if I had to say anything, I would love for the 3-year action plan to get uploaded in the 3-year action plan section on your portal. And that's the only thing that's there. And then if you have any other supporting documents, and I know folks online may not be able to see this very good, but the risk assessment section, that's where we're going to upload the risk assessment, and then we'll upload that map if you have it. If our community is larger and we break it up into zones and you have different zone leaders or area leaders, or block captains, like Megan said, if we have that, then we want to have a organizational chart. So we're going to upload that into there. If you have a map that is hard to see the dwelling units, or it doesn't fit on this, like you can't see anything because you're trying to fit it on this one little screen, upload multiple maps. It's okay. And so, yeah, that's my quick run through of the risk assessment and action plan. We maybe have, oh yeah, I have more questions here for later, and I thank you for your time. Oh yeah, you do have questions. Mhm. Yes. From here, well, we like to have them reach out to the resident leader. That's the first and foremost. Oh, if you're not in a Firewise community, then we reach out to Jackie or myself and we try to get you to create a Firewise community. So, and that's where the education outreach and the public event, we really love to see those be done at a local place in a gathering where other neighbors can see, oh, well, what is, you have a booth set up. What is Firewise? And then we get you to set up that Firewise community. And then the education outreach portion, I know it's hard on 500, 1,000, 2,500 dwelling units. It's hard to get that certificate out to everybody, but that's something that we're working on because as we go through this insurance, I don't want to call it a crisis, but it feels like a crisis, right? So I don't like to use that word, but that's what it feels like, right? And so we have people emailing and calling us, all of us daily, and going, where's this certificate? How do I get it? The real person that I have the certificate, Jackie has a certificate, and our resident leaders, all of you have the certificate. But if everybody emailed us or Jackie, the average Firewise community was about 277 homes. And so if every Firewise resident leader got 277 inquiries for a certificate, that's a lot. So we encourage people to make sure you give that certificate out. And we're also looking at some other things to maybe have that available online. And there's lots of options. Yeah. Wait for questions later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Captain Osbo. And yes, that is also the importance of connecting with your resident leaders and making sure that you have an email group or a text thread so you guys can get that communication to share those documents. So our next presenter is Annie from United Policyholders.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to tackle insurance. Nobody has tomatoes, right? The biggest thing that I found as a fire survivor myself is explaining and educating you as to what you can charge to different buckets of your insurance. And then how does that transfer for those of you who are on the California FAIR plan? I never could understand what I had in my policy. My agent just said, you're okay. So your dwelling, you have a dollar figure. You all have this wonderful paper. This is basically a mock policy. So your dwelling, you have a dollar figure. What we hope is that you also have a percentage of replacement value. 25 to 50% is the average. Some will not give you anything but 25. That increases what you have in your policy by that percentage. So if you have 300,000, you have 25%, you're at 375 to replace your home. What's your square footage? Divide that out so you know what you would have per square foot. Then you need to talk to a contractor and ask them, what does it cost right now to rebuild my home per square foot? That will depend on all sorts of different factors. The market, the availability of builders, as we all know, COVID, I mean, the world changes all the time. So I personally have my house a little bit overinsured. That is your choice, how much you want. Your insurance will not give you a dollar figure and stand behind it. So you need to be really clear that that is your insurance policy and you are in charge of it. You also have this wonderful other structures. So your fences, your unattached decks, sheds, those are other structures. If your garage is not attached to your house, that's an other structure. So you want to make sure you have enough money in that to cover all of that. Your personal property is pretty standard. If you take your house, turn it upside down and shake it, whatever falls out, that's yours. But you want to go around your house. We do not have model homes. You actually have to pick up boxes and open them, but you want to film all of your contents, not for the insurance, but for when you possibly, I hope not, have to do that contents list. It will make your life a lot easier. And hopefully you'll have a child, a nephew, someone else that you can say, here's my contents, please do that for me. Your loss of use, that's a big one. For those who have mortgages, it's even bigger. That you can charge your rent in a comparable place for. You can elevate that a bit. Supply and demand always brings the prices up. You can rent your contents. If you have a total loss and you lose everything, you're going to want to rent your contents. You cannot possibly go out and replace all that stuff so that you can live day to day. I put an extra, and I'm hoping it's enough, $500 into every month for the loss of use for renting my contents. You can also charge for being out of your house, being farther from the gym, from school, from work, the mileage. Those are some of the big things. There's also little things, and every insurance company will tell you something different. Mine paid for, I moved in with my guy, paid for an electronic fence because I have a little dog and he has 2 acres without a fence. And I'm really glad they paid for that because she blew through it the first day and never looked back. Your code upgrades or law or ordinance. Insurance is weird. I don't know why some have to word it one way or another. That brings your house from the year it was built to today's standards. California state standards. We cannot get around them to rebuild. My house in 2017, I rebuilt in 2018. My house was a 1970s tract home, 1,500 square feet. Mine was $68,000. Doesn't seem huge. Now it would be about 100,000 because you have to have solar, an electric car hookup. They keep adding stuff year to year, and it goes by your square footage. If you don't have that bucket, it comes right out of your pocket. It can't come out of any other bucket. So it's really important to ask that question. Do I have code upgrades in my policy? When you have that conversation with your agent, it's so very important to follow it up with an email. A really good agent will follow it up with you. In most cases, you have to follow it up with them. I talked to you on this date. These were my questions, and these are the answers I heard. It doesn't have to be abrasive, but that's your paper trail, your documentation, and that is huge. In the Marshall Fire in Colorado, I had person after person sitting in front of me. They would say they had a 2,000 or 2,500 square foot house, and they had 325,000 to 350 to rebuild. But if you didn't have the documentation, that's what you got. In the best case scenarios, those who had it could go right to the Department of Insurance and they would make them whole. So that's the difference between recovery and non-recovery. So it only is advantageous to you. Your agent may say, well, you don't need to do that. Some actually get a little offended. State Farm, just so you know, has one email address. Doesn't matter if you're in recovery, if it's your agent, they have one email address because they don't want documentation. So that tells you how much weight it carries. All those buckets that I just went through, I have a paper at my table that compares this basic policy with a California Fair Plan and the components that the California Fair Plan does not have in it, so that you know what you need to put it together or what you don't put together, because quite frankly, you can't afford all the bells and whistles, but you want some insurance on your place. I mean, we're just going to be really realistic here. Not everybody can afford insurance and the whole package right now. So it's important that we understand that and that we react to that. There are 4 main kinds of insurance. Up until this last year, we only had to discuss 2 with you. One was a conventional admitted insurance policy, and one was the California Fair Plan. The other 2 are a lender-placed policy that your mortgage will say, guess what? You failed to show us proof of insurance. So we have put insurance on your mortgage. People read that, they think, I got it. On the bottom of that, it'll say something like, you should look for your own insurance as you will have more coverage for less price. Okay? What they're really not sharing with you is that that is just for the mortgage. You don't have loss of use. You don't have contents. You don't have any equity. You've just lost everything and the mortgage is paid off and you're done. So please be really aware of that. We're finding after disasters that people are coming to us and saying, well, yeah, I have insurance, and it's heartbreaking. So just don't fall into that trap of thinking, okay, well, I wasn't able to secure it for myself, but my mortgage company got it for me. The fourth kind is the non-admitted policy companies. An admitted carrier is backed by the California Department of Insurance. They will fight the good fight. They will take your complaint. They have an insolvency plan that they all have to pay into. If one was to go belly up in the middle of a disaster, you would get $500,000. The non-admitted are only this much regulated. They do not have an insolvency plan, but they are a viable solution in our situation that we're in now. And many people have used them over the years. They're common names for many people. Lloyd's of London, most people have heard of that. So it's not what you want to do if you're struggling with finding insurance is you want to go to a good broker and you want to ask them, can you find me insurance? If they talk about this non-admitted, at least you're educated about it. There is a site called AM Best or wonderful Google, and you can type in what is the financial status of this company, and they will give you that rating. If I was on a non-admitted, if I could not afford the FAIR plan, or if I'm getting a lot more insurance through a non-admitted, I check that every month. It's really important for you to understand the grading system. They're A++, A+, A. So it's not, an A is not the top. A B++ is better than a B. We're not, it's not just simple school grades. Mitigation standards, which you all have, those are a knockoff of the IBHS, which is a nonprofit in North Carolina. It's every guy's dream job. They build things to destroy it. So they build a house, they throw hail at the roof, what withstood it, what didn't, they throw embers at it. The list that we supply is the one that most people can financially afford. You don't have to do all of it. Do as much as you can. And for me, that was starting with the first 5 feet, because I hear from these guys all the time, first 5 feet is a big deal. Covering my vents with 1/8 inch mesh, wire mesh, which is huge. You have to take off the old, otherwise it can clog up or you can get mold under your house. But not allowing that ember to get under your house or through your chimney and land on your carpet, that's huge. Most of these fires are ember passed along, and they are burning the houses from the inside out, not the outside in. So you want to take a look at that list and you just want to start checking it off. It might be, it takes you 4 years to get through that list, but each thing you do will enhance the protection that you're supplying to your number one asset in life. And my final, well, I have two. Everybody here has children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, whatever that looks like. Renter's insurance is a great gift, and it's a great education for our younger people. If more people had renter's insurance, which can be as little as $10 a month, when we have these major disasters, they at least have a safety net under them where, yes, they have to write down all their contents. But with that chunk of money, they can get into a new place and get started again. They're not living in their cars. You wouldn't believe how many local assistance centers I have gone to where there's tents and campers all over the place. And that's where the immediate need ends up being. And so for homeowners, that means that when you guys have a need, the pyramid effect, there's nothing left. So it's twofold. It's educating the future, and it's providing them with some safety, and it's securing if you guys need some help. And I can't say that enough. It's so inexpensive. I mean, we try to tell people, well, do you buy a couple Starbucks a month? Buy 2 less. Now, these are my own little list. And these I've curated, worked very hard at. 5 phone numbers on a piece of paper in an envelope in your car. Why? Because we might run out the door without our phone. We can find a phone. We don't memorize phone numbers anymore. How are you going to call your children to let them know you're out, your neighbor to help get them out, whatever that may look like, those 5 most important, one being someone out of the area. We all know that we should have some cash. Maui was a perfect example. Power went out, internet went down, credit cards, debit cards were useless. You need at least enough cash to eat and gas, at least. If you want to live in a hotel for a couple of days, that might increase that amount. Half a tank of gas. That's your sign. You need to get to the gas station. And know your neighbors. Know their strengths, know their weaknesses, know who can help with something. Put lock boxes on your house. You don't have one neighbor with a key to your house who's not home that day. You have all your neighbors who can go in and get your animals, alert your kids who have earbuds in and aren't answering the phone, help with an elderly person. So I think that, those lock boxes are $25 on Amazon. And when you lock yourself out of your house, you're going to be really grateful that it's there, but you have to put the key back. Figure out right now what's important. The night I left my house, we did a time frame. I think I had 5 minutes from the time I got the alert to my neighbor getting out and the back bumper of her car was melted. That's how much time you have to decide. And your brain goes on overtime. It just, you have no clue. What's most important? I can tell you that night, I took the cash in my drawer. I took my dog, her leash, and my purse. And that's exactly what I take now, except now I take the boyfriend. One car. When you evacuate, take the car that doesn't have full insurance coverage. Leave the other one because insurance will cover it. But when you clog up those roads so that you guys are backed up and the fire's coming up on you, that's scary. And nobody wants to be in that situation. And my final is, I'm sure all of you have the city and the county alerts. If you don't have watch duty, we call it in Coffee Park in Santa Rosa, we call it Valium for our soul. So put that on your phone if you don't have it. I will be inside tabling for as long as everybody has questions, if you have anything in particular. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Cordy Craig from Placer Resource Conservation District.
Hey everybody. Annie, thank you so much for that. That was super informative. And insurance is super complicated. What I'm going to talk about and kind of the program that the RCD has is super simple. So buckle up. So my name is Cordy Craig. I'm the Prescribed Fire Program Manager at Placer RCD. I'm just going to really briefly go over what some of the resources that the RCD has is. Perfect. So for those of you not familiar with the Resource Conservation District, we're based out of Auburn. We're now 18 people strong. We are primarily grant funded. The beauty of that means that we can really evolve and meet the needs of the community where they're at. So we have 2 departments, an ag department and a forestry department. The forestry department is primarily what I'm gonna touch on. I hope all of you are familiar with our chipper program. It's an incredibly popular program. We offer subsidized chipping services. There's an application online. It's $80 an hour. You pile all your brush in according to our guidelines, and then a crew comes in and can chip it for you. Explore our website if you're not familiar with it. We also have a few forestry members who work on large shaded fuel breaks. So All of these shaded fuel breaks are funded by CalFire, and we're basically targeting that I-80 corridor from Auburn up all the way above Colfax. So we have 4 major ones. The idea is to connect the entire ridgetop. If we protect that ridgetop, we are protecting all of the infrastructure like I-80 and all of our communities alongside I-80, but we're also protecting the watershed from ignitions within the communities. So it's dual purpose. Next slide. I am most familiar with my program, which is the Prescribed Burning on Private Lands program. In 2019, we received funding from CalFire with the intent to develop a mechanism that increases pace and scale of prescribed burning in Placer County. So we identified barriers and have solutions to increasing that pace and scale. The primary barriers were that people are incredibly supportive of prescribed burning. Yes, fire is scary, but there is also a pretty good understanding, particularly now and in the last 5 years, that has developed. They understand the fuels benefits, the safety benefits, the ecological benefits, but most folks have identified that they lack the skills, knowledge, and confidence to implement it on their own. Megan mentioned this in her presentation, but there are so many government agencies, nonprofits that are working incredibly hard to provide you guys with the resources you need to do the work, but we can't do the work for you. So what we found is that we need to educate our homeowners, our private landowners, to do the work themselves. And that is by far the most effective way that we'll get work done. The motto, and I believe this was Steve Garcia, but the motto of this program is that we can burn 1 million acres a year by training 1 million landowners to burn 1 acre. So we're entirely focused on low complexity burning. That first image in that first slide showed the type of fire that we're burning. Less than 2 feet, ideally 6 inches to a foot. It's backing fire. It's incredibly boring. We want people to not be excited about it. And so the way that we do that, we'll go to the next slide. The way that we've found success doing that is by pairing both classroom workshops as well as on-the-ground training. So we know we can't learn how to ride a bike by watching a YouTube video. We bring people in to do a little bit of death by PowerPoint, just so that they understand why we're burning in California, why the ecosystem needs low-intensity burning, the history of fire in California. And then we also help navigate folks with the permitting, the liability conversation, as well as how to appropriately prep and prepare their unit to mitigate any risks and reduce any escape or loss of control. But all of that knowledge is truly only as powerful as the action that follows. So we always ask folks who are attending any type of workshops, all of you folks here who are watching these presentations, you now have more knowledge. Now you have to go take action in order to start making our communities more fire resilient. So we often offer demonstration burns. Our demo burns are offered pretty much any time the weather window's there. We try to get folks to burn. I have the numbers of last year memorized. I don't have this past year's stats memorized, but last year in the 2022-2023 prescribed burn season, the RCD offered 18 demonstration burns. We burned a total of 25 acres. That tells you how small we're functioning. The small scale, that's a drop in the bucket, and that is not going to save our communities. The beauty of it is, though, we asked folks then at the end of the season to report back the acres that they were able to accomplish themselves now that we provided them with the skills and knowledge to do it. And it came back that cumulatively over about 45 responses, folks completed 275 acres of broadcast burning on their own. And those were all in units less than 5 acres. So what we are finding is that education is incredibly powerful, and that when we train people and provide them with the tools and resources, that they are very capable of doing this themselves, making their property more fire resilient, making it safer for first responders, and making it a defensible home. So there's so many benefits to it. Next slide. And this is just my last slide, but basically, if you're a landowner interested in prescribed fire, what resources are available to you. Again, we have those workshops and demonstration burns. The workshops, we do a basic 101 workshop, but because we're grant funded and we just received another fire prevention grant this year to help sustain us for the next several years, we really are looking to meet the community where they are. We've now educated more than 700 folks in the region, and they're now asking for more, right? Different education, more advanced education, things like burn planning, better understanding of fuels and fire ecology. So again, we're grant funded. We're very responsive to the needs of the community. If there's something that you think your community needs to learn, we're happy to go out and do it. And navigating the permitting process, we can help guide folks with that. Sorry, I have terrible eyesight. Writing burn plans, neighborhood specific presentations. So this is another reason why I love coming to Firewise community presentations, is because you already have the structure of these neighborhood leaders who can help influence your neighbors and your community. As a quasi-governmental agency, people don't always trust me, and nor do they really want the government coming in telling them what to do. But if we have these neighborhood leaders that already have gained the trust of their community, they can invite us in, and then we can have true, transparent conversations about what this looks like. We've had people bring up that they have respiratory issues, particularly during COVID. That was a huge deal. We are not trying to smoke people out. We want to work with those people, and we understand that having respiratory issues is not fun, particularly when there's smoke in the air. Nobody truly enjoys smoke in the air. But there are ways around that, right? We can target it when the wind's pushing the smoke another direction. We can make sure they're notified when we're planning on burning. So anyway, all this is all to say that the RCD is here to help your community. Please contact us. Please use us. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Cordy. Next, we have April Shackelford from North Tahoe Fire Department.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to be here, Jackie. So we're getting our presentation up, and we'll make there's about 20 Firewise communities in Lake Tahoe Basin, in Placer County, and then we have another couple too in El Dorado County, where we also, our fire protection district also covers. And so similar to Cordy Craig and the Placer RCD, the Tahoe Resource Conservation District has a lot of resources available to the public, of course, just in Tahoe. But I'm happy to have kind of the parallel conservation district, because they are doing similar things. So for us, our big outreach campaign this year, and it's a carry on for another 3 or 4 years, is this Get Defensive. And these are all local people that a lot of people in the community kind of recognize. And with the hope of kind of bringing the personal component into fire protection, and that, you know, the defensive bit affects these people. Yeah, so next slide, please. And basically we make banners. Some of those become digital banners, and that's kind of our messaging that we try to keep fresh and engaging. And so the biggest thing that we're doing, well, the biggest thing that affects my job that the Tahoe Resource Conservation District is doing is fire adapted communities. And this is a program that's been in place in the basin, I want to say like at least 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. And we're kind of in a new round of it. And so we're doing a lot of things, especially now that Firewise is here, to sort of adapt fire adapted communities to better house and support Firewise. And so this is a picture of a neighborhood leader meeting. So all these people are, you know, representatives of different communities. This is actually around the basin. And they get together and share ideas about how to motivate people, how to, you know, how do you run your website? You know, how do you work your PDF? How do, you know, who do I need to contact to get chipping? And so it really helps everybody kind of put their heads together on well, how do you hang your Firewise sign, and what materials do you buy? So like, there's a lot of little questions that come up, and it helps with that information, but it also helps, the community cohesion that they each gain by being Firewise, but then sort of the larger body of Firewise communities around the basin, I feel like really continues to motivate people. So. And so what it does for us is it helps pay for my time. We have 3 seasonal defensible space inspectors that have a lot of additional availability for education. In my district, we have a lot of short-term rental inspections, and so that takes a lot of our time. And so with this grant-funded money from Fire Adapted Communities, we can have additional seasonal inspectors that help with that educational component. And then from the Tahoe Resource Conservation District, there's a grant manager that I report to that has deliverables such as improving defensible space on parcels, producing chip piles, green waste dumpsters is another part of that. And then we also have a Fire Adapted Communities program coordinator that does a ton to help residents with their Firewise applications. And then map and database support. So this map's available to us. So if we do the risk assessments in our district, so we can use their map to go in and just basically grab a screenshot out and put that in the PDF. It lets us have a lot of noteworthy neighborhood leaders. It's been inspirational to meet with some of them and the things they're doing to just basically contact someone and say, well, you're not doing your defensible space, so me and the committee's coming over. Are you okay with that? And they're able to actually get a ton of work done, and it's been amazing. And then green waste dumpsters is another bit I'll cover in just a second. And then we have some new software that this funding helps us support our chipping program. We usually chip about 1,000 piles a year. It's been as high as 1,400 piles. And so it just takes a lot of organization to figure out where these piles are and get people, get our crew out there to get that work done. Next slide, please. So this just an overhead of the areas we cover, some of our deliverables from last year. A lot of that is pretty much on target to more or less be the same. We do a lot to try to meet with residents on site to educate and inform and inspire. And we were able to remove a lot of pine needles and pine cones in green waste dumpsters. Some of the new software and just free defensible space inspections is part of what that Fire Adapted Communities program does. So with our seasonal inspectors, we have a lot of availability to come around and educate people. We are kind of doing both, but in general, we're moving into a new system that allows a full 6 to 8 page report of what needs to be improved at the parcel. So it's an online login, so the resident can go and basically see what the issue is. It makes it very clear, as opposed to the kind of older school method using our LE 100 form that can often leave a homeowner to go, well, what shrubs do you want me to cut? And, what trees in particular are in bad shape. So, and then they can also go online and resolve these issues. And then we will typically come back around and do a second inspection, and sometimes a third or even fourth, to hopefully bring them to a place where we don't see any issues. Next slide. And then just to break out where we have Firewise up in the basin, and I'd love to see this map get developed on a state level, or not this map, but a similar map where we can all participate and add communities as we build it. But basically, it lets us kind of look across our district and see where areas aren't represented by Firewise. And we can help to maybe put some neighbors together, because we will get that person that calls and says, well, am I in a Firewise community and can I get my cert? And it's like, well, you're not in a Firewise community, but if you know some people and you want to start that thing up, we'll do that, kind of similar to what others have said earlier today. So just lets us give a great visual, and then we can, as communities become Firewise, we'll do a curbside inspection for all of those homeowners, so they all get the direct information that, hey, you got work to do solely, as well as community-wide. Just some chipping program. We're at 503 this year. We breached just 1,000 last year. And it's a pretty quick sign up with this Chipper Day app that we're using. And you upload a picture The chipping crew comes, takes a picture after they get done. So we have good before and after. So it leads to very little confusion about where's a pile, is it chipped? And then I can kind of look back from my computer and kind of see where the crew is, what work is done. So just a little bit about that program up in the basin. And then also the green waste dumpsters. So kind of like a defensible space block party. And I hear these things called pine needle roundup, the rake off, all these different things, dumpster days. So it makes it exciting for people. And then another advantage that we received from the Tahoe Resource Conservation District is they partnered with high schools that have to do like community outreach as part of getting a high school diploma. And so kids have to sign up to assist with the community with stuff. So it's been fantastic to kind of get the youth involved. And then often, a lot of our homeowners are, in their 70s and sometimes 80s, and it can be remarkable how much heavy lifting, people continue to do. And it just helps kind of fade in the next generation about you have these responsibilities too. And by the way, can you lift that? Because my back's hurting. Yeah, and then just we see the events do all kinds of different things. I mean, the one in the middle there has they bought their own vests, and they do an amazing job of tracking hours. I do require match to get the free green waste assistance dumpster, so they need to track who's coming, how much stuff they bring, and then that lets my funder know that the community is also investing in this work, and then we can continue to carry it forward. Publications is another thing. CalFire has a ton of great information. So does Firewise. There's different stuff across the country, but we really like what's been coming out of the Cooperative Extension, University of Nevada, Reno. We're all up in the basin, so there's a lot of partnerships, and they've been able to make great stuff that's really applicable to us. And then also through the Cooperative Extension and the Tahoe Resource Conservation District, we have this Living with Fire program, or website, excuse me. And in there, it has all kinds of information about preparedness. And we also keep information on there about where prescribed fires are happening in the basin. So it's a way to get that information out to people, that burns are taking place potentially in their neighborhood, and that, maybe they should consider, smoke impacts. And then we're also developing it to also show where fuels reduction treatments are happening. So it just will give you a little information about who's doing the treatment, how many acres, and when they expect to finish. And I mean, these guides are great information. The home retrofit guide is one that, is kind of new. And, as we continue to talk more about vents and that 0 to 5 foot zone, it has a lot of great information about deck joists and sideboards on decks. And I kind of glanced through and went back and look at my deck, and it doesn't matter how much veg work I do if I don't correct the issues going on the deck. Just the way the boards are, separating. It's an older home. Pine needles and litter and other duff are collecting in that space. That's the same space that embers are going to fall into, and it's just a nice little vector to bring fire right into my house. I think this is all just great awareness. So we try to pitch these things out, hand them to homeowners when we're doing defensible space inspections, and just educate as often and as much as we can. And then just ending with the 4 best reasons to become Firewise. So it just shows that long-term commitment. And then it just unites the community. I hear stories about, I didn't even know these people, and last year we all traveled to Italy together and had a great time. So it's just been, uniting over the right reasons. And I think it just gives us all a good reason to really agree that, we want our neighborhood, and we have work to do where we can all pitch in. And I'll tell people, like, if you're good with computers, great. If you're good with a shovel, great. Like we can work together to bring our skill set together to fill out these documents, fill dumpsters, and improve our defensible space, having these events that unite us. And then the support from local, county, and state and federal. I will do a lot. I work with partners with the California Tahoe Conservancy and the Forest Service, and there's a lot of activity happening. And so it helps us to know who Firewise leaders are, because we can let one leader know that there's a prescribed fire happening in your area. And while we have to wait for that perfect window to actually let that burn, ignite the fire based on weather conditions and smoke conditions and things like that. But we can send an email to that neighborhood leader and they can pulse it out to everyone on their list. And so that, the more people that know smoke is coming, the better the burn goes, the more they can plan accordingly if they do have respiratory issues or, maybe they do want to be out of town. And then we also, like if you're Firewise community, it just makes a lot more sense to put a fuels reduction treatment next to that community versus one that is not Firewise. And so there is, not that it's a cut and dry thing, but we like to support people who are supporting themselves kind of thing. So that's another great reason for Firewise. And then lastly is, probably the biggest push for Firewise is the insurance component. And I continue to hear that the more we're Firewise, the more likely we'll be able to keep or maintain insurance, potentially even getting a discount. But I'm hearing more and more that these mitigation efforts have to be recognized by insurance companies. And so it's just all the more important that we move this forward. Yeah, and I mean, I guess we'll see if what the legislation brings, but that's about all I had.
Thank you, April. So next we have Maria Marsh from the Truckee Fire Department, and she's joining us via Zoom.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm going to share my screen with you guys in just a minute. All right, Jackie, can you see me there? And well, I'm going to assume yes, unless somebody says no. And I'm also curious. Fantastic. Looks like I can see you guys in the meeting room and then maybe also online. If I can get a show of hands of anybody that is from the Truckee Fire Protection District, sort of know who we're talking to here. So my guess is that we don't have much representation there. So I'm going to just sort of make you guys drool with envy at all of the programs we have on offer in the Truckee Fire Protection District. We are very lucky to be funded by Measure T, which was a tax measure passed in 2021 that creates our full wildfire prevention division, which is 4 full-time staff and 3 to 5 approximately defensible space specialists who are hired seasonally. The Truckee Fire District runs from about that 20 interchange where it cuts off to Nevada County from 80. We follow the 80 corridor east to Herschdale on the east side, and then we have a couple pop outs to Floriston and Hobart Mills. You can see the county line sort of runs through, it's hard to see on here, but runs through the middle of our district. So maybe a third of our homes, possibly less than that even, are in Placer County, but we do collaborate with Jackie and all of the other agencies that serve the Placer County area on supporting all of our Firewise communities that are in Placer County or developing in Placer County. We have 26 recognized Firewise communities within the Truckee Fire District. We have 5 currently developing communities that we hope to get recognized by the end of the season this year. Approximately 80 or more % of the structures within our district are within Firewise communities, which is a really remarkable statistic for us. And we are always looking for volunteer resident leaders for those couple of communities that are still not organized for Firewise. To support our Firewise communities and all of our residents, we also offer free inspections. And those inspections include both blanket inspections. We're now on a 3-year cycle where we're literally going door to door and doing a curbside inspection of every single property in the district. We additionally provide scheduled inspections which for your average homeowner is free. We also have inspections for construction, STRs, real estate, all the things that you could imagine you might need a defensible space inspection for. Those inspections create a report, and I think we're using the same software now that April is in North Tahoe. It provides information on the defensible space items that are identified, as well as home hardening recommendations and home hardening strengths. So showing both the resilient and vulnerable features of your structure. And this is great information because it supports a lot of what was talked about earlier with insurance, ways that you can get discounts on your insurance. Also, in support of home hardening, we're encouraging residents to do some of those upgrades with a home hardening rebate. And we have what my manager likes to call an all-you-can-eat buffet of green waste disposal options, which I will let you go to our website and peruse at your leisure. But what we have specifically for Firewise communities is a dumpster rebate. You can rent up to 4 20 to 30 yard dumpsters for your Firewise green waste event. And we have also seen great success with this. We do have the benefit of being able to offer a full rebate for those for our Firewise communities. We also have community wildfire prevention grants, which were just reviewed, and over $500,000 was awarded this year for the projects that will be funded, including a couple of vegetation management projects. We recently completed our community wildfire protection plan, which, among other things, gives us some guidelines and the opportunity to fund even more vegetation management projects, which sort of again, a nod to what April mentioned, often are of great benefit to our Firewise communities as they are organized structures through which residents can present, appeal to us for the grants, or otherwise collaborate on bringing projects that are immediately adjacent to their neighborhoods. One other thing that we have up on the eastern side here is a developing Firewise coalition. We're trying to create an opportunity similar to what you guys have down on the west side to create a in-person forum for our Firewise communities to connect. And if anyone is watching this or participating, that is up on the east side, whether you're interested in Firewise communities or already in one, encourage you to connect with these guys. Their next meeting is actually on September 3rd in the evening. The details are here. So I will drop my information in the chat, and I assume our slides are also going to be made available afterwards. So if anyone has questions about what's going on in the Truckee Fire District, you can feel free to reach me. Again, my name is Maria, and you can reach me at firewise@truckeefire.org. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. So our last presenters today are Ryan Westner and Kevin Griffiths from Placer County Sheriff's Office and CalFire.
How's everybody today? Fantastic. So I usually don't stand in front of a podium, so I apologize for that, but that's just me. We wanted to talk to you about the evacuation portion of all. In the mic. Oh, Zoom. This is not good. So we want to talk to you about how we do evacuations here in Placer County. They're different than Nevada County, than El Dorado County, but we like the way we do it, and that's the way we're going to be doing it. So you guys all need to know what that is like, right? So the sheriff's office statutorily is responsible for getting everybody out of that evacuation zone. We make those zones. We do it in cooperation with CalFire, but we're the ones who are responsible for that, right? So you're going to hear from us if you're on Placer Alert, if you're watching our Facebooks, if you're watching all the social media, you'll hear 3 things from us. You'll hear an evacuation order. That means leave now. You'll hear that. You'll hear deputies or other law enforcement agencies, depending on if we need to help, driving, trying to get to your neighborhoods, high-low sirens. They're talking on their PA systems. If you hear that, it's time to leave. That fire is imminent coming towards you. Oh, I thought they could. Can you hear me now? Yeah, that's weird. So, second to that, you're going to hear an evacuation warning zone, right? If you're in that area, that means it's time to start packing up. Some of you may need to leave during that warning zone. If you have a bunch of animals, if you have somebody with you that takes a little bit of time getting into the car, that's the time for you to leave, right? Evacuation order, everybody leaves. Evacuation order, those people who need time to leave, start moving and getting out, right? And then you're going to see a shelter in place. We try not to use the shelter in place very much. That's if, like, we have a hospital, sometimes we'll do it at the hospital. We'll keep everybody in that hospital. Fire will come in with some of their engines, put them around that hospital and protect that hospital at that time. That's typically where we try to use that. Our goal is to get everybody out of the way, right? I'm not going to tell you necessarily which way to go out. I'm just going to tell you you need to leave. I need you to be responsible and to know your neighborhood. Because if I gave you all a plan right now today that said, when you drive out of your driveway, I expect you to go left, take your next right, take your next left at the main road, and go down the hill. Evidently, probably next week, the fire's going to be to your left, right? And it's going to cut off your spot. And a lot of people, unfortunately, this happened in Chico, they stopped. They didn't know which other way to go. They didn't have a secondary plan out. So in Placer County, we don't tell you which way to go. Once we start to get units into the area and get people moving, you'll start to see CHP with us, road crews, starting to direct you at that time. But don't count on us being there right away, because we're going to be going through those neighborhoods and getting everybody out. Now, we're very good at this. We're very good here in Placer County, and it's because we train. In 2021, we had the river fire. 2 years ago, we had the mosquito fire. We didn't lose any lives. Unfortunately, we lost some houses, but we didn't lose any lives. And it's because of that training. We come together with CalFire and we do training every year with all of our sergeants and their battalion chiefs. And now we're taking it across the state to teach exactly this, how to come together. When you see a fire, you'll see my truck there with the back open. You'll see their truck with their back open. And we are working together in unified command. I'll let you take this.
So we're talking about evacuations from fires.
Into the mic.
We're talking about evacuations from fires. So when the fire goes, if we get a 911 call, who goes first? Fire department goes first. So as the fire department's going first, our second responders will come behind us eventually. So once we're there, we're going to set up an ICP, and that's an incident command post. And while we have the incident command post going, we have all of our engines coming, and we have our aircraft coming also. So the number one thing about our aircraft is now we have an aerial platform, a spotter plane that is looking at the fire and telling us what the fire is doing and where the fire is at in real time. It's not coming from the internet, not coming from somebody telling us. We know exactly where it's at. And with that, we come into unified command, and that's where we develop our plan. We develop the plan at the back of our engine or at the back of our pickup trucks with our mapping tools and with our aerial spotter telling us exactly where the fire is going, where it's going to impact. With that, the sheriff's department's able to build their zones and start their evacuations with their orders and their warnings. Moving on from that point, once we have the warnings and orders out and we have identified what's going to get impacted first, that's when we can make an organized, systematic evacuation. Anything else to add?
Yeah, we're the Placer County Sheriff's Office. I just got to point that out. We're not a department. So names are important, right? It is systematic once we get to that point, but that point could be 15, 20 minutes into this fire, depending on where you're living. You're going to hear things from Nevada County. They have zone haven, right? Those are set up. People are always asking, hey, what zone am I in? Placer County does not use zone haven. We use our sergeants, our lieutenants out there with CalFire at the back of those trucks to decide what the zone is going to be. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to evacuate an extra 100 people that don't need to be evacuated. That's horrible. And if I'm evacuating you, my next thing on my mind is how do I get you back in? So the river fire was a perfect example of that. We drew our zones to evacuate people out on our side of the Bear River. Nevada County hit zone haven and just started pushing buttons, which is relevant to them. But what that did, that evacuated a lot of people in Nevada County because where that fire started was in one of their corners of their zone and blew away. So once they hit that button, everybody in that zone had to be evacuated. I don't push a button. I get on my computer. I get on my maps. I start drawing that. I don't have to be near the fire Because when I'm going, I'm calling people like Wosner, I'm calling some of the battalion chiefs that I'm really good friends with. What do we need to do? And we're talking about it right there on my maps. And I can build that plan in just a couple of minutes, get it to dispatch, get it out on social medias, and get people moving. So when you hear zones, make sure you're paying attention to CalFire's website, our websites. You will not have a number. On that day when I evacuate you, the first zone I evacuate will be zone 1. The next zone will be zone 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They'll have a designated couple of letters in front of them to talk about what the fire is so everybody knows. We learned that at the mosquito fire. We had the mosquito fire, Dutch fire hit off at the same time. Well, I can't have 2 zone 1s in the county. I got to have 2 zone 1s, but they got to have 2 different letters to kind of proceed or follow those. I am assuming you have power, and if you don't have power, that's a good reason to leave. I'm being honest with you. But no.
So,
Okay.
Where things were out of control in our area. You had no guidance from your department. It was a free-range circus, okay? Because we didn't have power, then we didn't have internet, and guess what? We didn't have self-service, okay?
Okay.
So I think
let me
we
get
need to,
this.
toss out the internet. You gotta think at
I got
ground
this.
level, what we're dealing with.
Sure.
All we're seeing is smoke.
Perfect. Right there. So you see the smoke, you see the fire. There is something happening in your community. Did you see the smoke? Okay, you saw it. So no, this would say, so if we're just going to do situational awareness, we can,
Okay. Let me take it.
hold on, let me just do this one thing.
I was running around our community telling people to get out,
Perfect.
okay? And on top of it, well, I don't want to get into the weeds too deeply because the time is, what I want you guys to focus, you bureaucrats to focus on.
You can take it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Listen, wait.
yes, sir. I'm waiting for you.
It's that we get a lot of fluff sometimes, and until you're at a resident level, where I have people that are either in wheelchairs, they don't have cell phones.
I got it.
And try to get them out of our community ahead of a perceived avalanche of evacuation.
Mhm.
So when I hear internet, I hear, let's get down to the brass tacks here.
I love siren.
Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, so let's make sure, because I don't think you heard the first part of what I said. Well, hold on. I did listen to you, so give me just a few seconds to help you understand. Those are the things I want you to pay attention to and make sure you have. But there are going to be those times where you don't have power, where you don't have internet, you don't have that stuff. We're not walking away from you. We're not sending those out and walking away. We're not doing that. I've been on enough of these fires. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I started with the 49 fire, which was the first major fire in California to take houses. This is personal to me. Everybody in Placer County means something to me. I don't sit there and go, it's just going to be this way. As I'm doing that part and trying to get those notifications out, because that's how I can hit the masses the quickest. But I'm also sending every deputy in our county to that location, and they're going to start at the fire. They're going to start building their way out and taking people out of harm's way that need to come out. We'll send helicopters if we can, if the airspace is open. I brought on the river fire, I had 90 deputies there within the first 2 hours. 90 deputies brought down to that fire. We have our high-low sirens. We go door to door. Mosquito fire. We were out there for multiple days, and we kept going back to neighborhoods that we had already evacuated, door to door. We talk about those communities that have people that are elderly, wheelchairs. I bring vans from our transportation division up to the river fire. I take buses through Placer County Transit to those locations. I will bring everything that I could possibly ask for from the state, from the county, to help save people's lives in our county. I don't care. I have the number to OES. I will do that. But if you have a community that has some of those unique needs, you got to be responsible for yourself. You got to let us know. You got to try to make it to a place, because we'll come. We'll come as fast as we can. But that's just it. We can only come as fast as we can because it doesn't do me any good to get into an accident trying to come to you. It doesn't do us any good to put cars in the way where fire, right? Our job is to get you out and to also get the guys with the big red trucks in to put the fire out. And when we're talking about evacuations, there's street closures and all that come into play. We have people that try to run those street closures. CHP, when you see them, you got to thank them every once in a while because they're constantly getting kicked in the shins at all those road closures. We don't let people back into the communities because we're trying to protect all of your belongings once we move people out, even if you're a resident. We've set it up in Placer County. If we move you out of your community and you need your medications, they work through OES to set up the pharmacy so you can go get that medication. We bring animal control to the back of my car. So if you have to leave your animals behind, we can deal with that too. We can feed your animals. And we did that for 6 weeks at the mosquito fire. So there are things that we're going to do, sir. And I'm sorry that you're frustrated and upset. And I'd love to talk to you afterwards to figure out your situation. Because if I failed you and I didn't do something right on those fires, because I've been to most of them, then I'd like to talk and learn from you. But that is our goal, is to get there to help you get out. It's not to leave you stranded, not to let you feel that way. So please, let's talk afterwards and I can help understand what you're feeling because that upsets me if I'm leaving somebody off the hook. Yes, ma'am.
I got it. Same. It's a law enforcement agency. So we will go into unified command, fire and law enforcement will go into unified command and do the exact same setup, the exact same systematic, organized evacuation that we do in the county.
We will work in partnership with Auburn PD. I've ran several fires with Auburn PD. They're at the back of the car because, well, in reality, the sheriff's office has more resources than Auburn PD, right? So when they call for help, we're coming. I've called for SAC PD, SAC County, Stockton. We had all kinds of agencies from across Northern California at the mosquito fire as that was kicking off. We'll bring everything that we can, but yes, we'll be working with them to try to make sure you're safe there.
Cell phones,
Good.
do they, does the people in the city have the ability to have that put on our phone?
If you go to Placer Alert, you can sign up and register your phone. And that's how we do that. That'll take care of your phone.
Can the speaker please repeat the questions when they hear it for the online audience? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So she was asking if the phones, if she could get that same phone call to her in the city of Auburn, and the answer is yes. You just have to sign up for Placer Alert through Placer County. The siren, did you talk about it? Yeah, you guys all understand the high-low siren when you hear that. That's the
It sounds like
European
European ambulance.
siren. All of our patrol cars are set up with that. And when the guys are going in and it's that immediate evacuation, they're flipping that on. They're going through as fast as they can with that siren on. If you're hearing that, that is absolutely the time to go. Usually if they have time to get out and knock on your door, they're going to do that. But we have great deputies in this county, especially I run Forest Hill and Colfax. I run where the big fires tend to happen, and my deputies are trained very well up there, and they will go right into the middle of that fire to get people out. Is there anything else that I can answer? Any question? Because that's the reality. I want to make sure when you leave here today, you feel comfortable. Yes, sir. That's the deputies
high-low
coming.
siren.
That's the deputies coming through those neighborhoods. I don't know if you can have a backup plan besides deputies right there, deputies, police officers, everybody we call to, I mean, we'll have SAC PD flying up the freeway with 30, 40 of their units coming to help us. And that's the way we are across the state to try to help everybody get out. But the backup plan is that personal service, that patrol car there coming to get you. If you have somebody who needs assistance to get out and you can make that phone call to us, we'll get a deputy or somebody to you to help get you out at that point, right? Yes, sir. Oh, PAs.
WIAs.
The,
PAs.
yeah, which Forest Hill does run 16:10 a.m., 10:20 a.m. They run emergency alerts there. There's a bunch of different systems that if it's going like that, we'll be hitting it. Some of them go extremely far. Like if Nevada County hits the WIA system, we're getting people calling us from Placer County. It's not as directed. And the same with us. If we were to hit that WIA system, it'll do the same thing. That's a little bit, too far, but we use that because, right, Placer County is a great place to come hike and do those things. And I have to be worried if the fire is headed towards a trail, I've got to take care of those people as well. We had 13. How many of you watched the Royal Fire? Right? And the CalFire is right there next to us. We had 13 missing kids that went out to hike. We had to go find them, send our search and rescue members in there with air attack watching overhead. I think it was actually air attack that spotted them and where they were and directed our people in there to get helicopters in there. So we're worried about everybody in the county, and we'll take care of you as best we can. Now, we can't do the what ifs every minute of the day. The fire starts in your backyard and it blows up from your backyard. I'm sorry, we might not be able to get to you that quick. I don't have a unit on every corner, but we'll get to you as fast as we can. That's our goal.
The approach with unified command in evacuations, this isn't something new. We've been doing this for 20 plus years. It's just been enhanced with the internet and phones and all of our new technology that we're using for evacuations and notifications.
Can we offer a question online, please?
Sure, absolutely. Any questions online?
Yes, sir. As a Firewise community leader in Meadow Vista, Placer County, we are struggling with how to meet the expectations for conducting a drill. We put out survey, we know what we want to do. It's not clear, and perhaps you or others could provide guidance to us leaders. If we're doing a drill, here's a little cookbook, ABC. What are some things we should start with? Who should we reach out to? And how could we be more effective in doing an effective drill?
Perfect. Can you do me a favor? Do you have Jackie's email address? I'm going to throw her under the bus right now because I am not. Ty Connors is our lieutenant for the sheriff's office over at OEM. I'm a sergeant that runs patrol and is in the middle of a lot of this stuff. But if you'll email her with your name and stuff like that, they'll get back to you and try to figure out how to put the packet that you're looking at together for you.
Thank you. And just a recommendation would be if there's just some simple guidance when doing a drill, do A, B, and C. Something simple for us to follow might be helpful. I'll do as you've suggested. Thank you, sir, for what you do.
Thank you.
My email is fireready@placer.ca.gov. Okay, I know. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate it. I know we have some questions. This is going to go a little bit differently. And I do want to also let everyone here in the building know that we do have the vendor tables. So if you have questions for any of the presenters that are no longer in the room, that's because they're down at the tables. And please feel free to go down there and ask your questions. We have Maria Marsh and April Shackelford, and then Placer County Sheriff and CalFire still here in the room with us. I believe Megan from NFPA is still on, and then Captain James Osbo is here. So if you have questions for any of them, please come off mute or raise your hand and we'll get you the mic. Okay. So
my question is for Captain Osbo. You mentioned a number that we have to put on our form of the residences or dwellings involved in our Firewise community. Does that mean the whole parcel within the boundary, or does that mean just the people who are partaking in the Firewise community? Because it may not be everybody in the community that wants to take part.
Yeah, if everybody hear that question. So the question basically is if you have you and your committee drew a boundary around your your Firewise community, and you identified that there's 125 homes in there, and throughout, talking to friends and neighbors, you found out that 5 of those folks didn't want to participate in it, and or you didn't reach out to all those folks, and you've only been able to reach out to 50 out of the 125 people. You're still drawing your boundary. You're still trying to count those, and we always recommend to put the 125 people or dwelling units on there, not the people, sorry. And then another thing is we do have some folks out there that are adamant that they don't want to be in the Firewise community. They don't have to participate. So they think that we're here, they see the CalFire patch and the government. And so some people are like, I don't want to be a part of a government program, on my parcel. And you can say, well, we're not a government program. We're a grassroots organization, and I'm taking charge as a resident leader, and they are just here hosting it for NFPA. And so those are some tools that you can use to talk to those folks, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Very simple logistics question. Is the Zoom call being recorded? And how do we get to the recording? Because there was lots of words. I think I've missed about 10% at least.
No worries. Yes. Thank you for asking. We have been recording the Zoom. We will make it available online. It'll be at placer.ca.gov/Firewise, and we'll have the entire recording there. Give us a little while to get it from media services and edited and put online, but we will have that and all documents available at the tables and the speaker's presentations available online for you to review. Yes, ma'am. We'll get a microphone over to you. They won't hear you on Zoom.
A great presentation about Truckee and Tahoe. Are any of those kind of resources available, like the green waste, et cetera, for those of us closer to the Auburn area?
For
I have other
Placer County,
questions, but
that's all right.
number one.
So Placer Recology manages your green waste. You would talk to them for any green waste. They do occasionally have free green waste days during the spring when you're cleaning out. We do also have the Defensible Space Fuels Reduction Program that is available East Placer and West Placer. There are qualifications, but we have a booth set up down the way. Come over and we'd be happy to discuss the program with you.
One more question. I
Sure.
won't ask all my questions. One more question was about how many, I think, I'm not sure if they were called residences in your community, and to make sure that matched up. We have at least 2 in our community who have added ADU units. One is lived in all the time, and the other, it has long-term visitors. How do we count those?
That is a great question. Megan, are you still online?
I am, and I would welcome James's input. This is a newer thing. I mean, if it's classified as a dwelling unit for tax purposes, I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry, that this is a newer thing popping up that really hasn't been brought to us in the form of a question before.
Captain Osbo is right behind you and he'd be happy to answer that question.
So the question is ADUs, do they count as a dwelling unit? And absolutely. The problem is that ADUs are in certain areas are going up so fast that we can't, as residents, we can't count those, or we don't know they're going in. And as you're driving through, you might not see it. And so as you do if you have a small enough community, you know everybody, you'll know that Sally down the road is putting in an ADU, and they'll request to add that. And then that's something that we're going to be talking about is how do we, with the ADUs going in, how are we going to adjust we're not really adjusting parcels at that point, which is not going to change the map. But it could change, if enough of them go in, it could change the percentages, which would require a new risk assessment and new action plan, if that makes sense. But that's a discussion that we're going to have as far as when that triggers it, because mostly right now people are changing their map to include more parcels, more people, more dwelling units.
Consideration. The fire department's coming in, how many, or if they're not considered a separate residence, my ADU isn't, but there are people living in both. There are 2 houses.
Correct. Yeah, so you're talking on your property, under your deed of your house, you have 1 resident. And then, but now you have an additional dwelling unit that's not considered a secondary resident. You don't have a secondary address or anything like that, no mailing address. So it's still a secondary dwelling unit on that parcel. It should count in the numbers, but as far as the fire department going there or having an address, if you call 911, they're going to still come to your address. And then as far as the county, there's different regulations. Some counties require you to have a secondary address for that ADU, potentially, especially if you're going to rent it out or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, if you do have a secondary address on your property, then you'd count it in your Firewise numbers. Yes. And that's where these numbers do change over time. And so having the conversations with us, so that way we know how to navigate it, because you're not changing necessarily your map boundary.
Can I ask a question online as a follow-up to that, please?
Yes.
Yes. So I live in Kings Beach, Placer County, where multiple homes are on what's called multiple parcels and lots here, as well as some lots have multiple units or motorhomes. So is it only by the actual building itself as the unit? Is it the parcel? Is it the structures? How do I define the units in such a diverse neighborhood that I live in?
Yeah, so defining the units is it can take the units as far as like an apartment complex, right? It's one building with 10 individual individual dwellings in there. So that would be each building would be 10 dwelling units.
Okay, so
And
that would be 10. So and then next door is one lot with like 6 motorhomes. Does that count as 6?
Does not count.
no, traditionally a motorhome does not count, though in certain situations the motorhome is a long-term dwelling and is
That's
not going anywhere. And so that is a conversation that we usually have one-on-one, and we have had people include those.
I'm trying to do this in the grid, which is going to be very difficult with the multiple different types of units here. Who can I work with to help guide me in making sure I get those aligned appropriately?
You can work with me. Send me an email.
Okay.
fireready@placer.ca.gov, and I'm happy to help you.
Great. Thank you very much. It's not a straightforward neighborhood. Thanks.
And Jackie, I want to throw this out there. Yes, please, for this certain instance, work with CalFire, work with Jackie. But, at NFPA, we get questions like, well, we have a campground and people come and they stay and they might stay for a long time and then they leave. This is not a program for campgrounds. We do have mobile home parks, but those are more stationary. Those are lots. Those are buildings. So it's not a transient.
No. And
Based
this
program?
neighborhood is not. This neighborhood is just a mixed neighborhood.
Right. I get that. I'm speaking more in general for all of the audience, because we have people every year try to come in with a campground, a thing like that, something that is not. This is a built environment program trying to solve that piece. So I just wanted to throw that out there as people get creative and try to solve different problems. Just knowing that there are some things we at NFPA are going to turn back, or CalFire will come to us with questions and there might be things that we turn back. I'm not saying it'll be your particular case, but this brings into that conversation of it's not a one size fits all, and it is not a program for all types. So
Thank you, Megan. I do know we have a lot of questions online. Unfortunately, because we're running over, I'm going to go ahead and take your questions and I will get the answers and post them online after the meeting. I want to thank you all for dedicating your time and listening to our speakers. Thank you very much for the engagement. Again, if you have any questions, please send me an email, fireready@placer.ca.gov. Have a great night.